Today, we're going to talk about the opposite of soft onset phonation, the glottal stop. Now, why would we want to talk about that since I just said it's something we're trying to avoid, right? Well, it's always better to be aware of potential pitfalls before you start learning something. So it's worth educating ourselves about what we want to try and avoid as well. So what is a glottal stop? Well, a glottal stop is when we close our glottis to stop the air from coming in or out of our lungs. Now, the glottis is just a catch-all term that for our purposes means our vocal cords, all right? Now, why would we want to stop the air from moving in and out of our lungs at all? Well, there are lots of reasons. How about holding your breath when you're going to dive under the water, or maybe lifting something heavy? You may not realize it, but your body uses the air in your lungs as a prop for the rest of your muscles when they're working to work against, right? So think about when you lift something heavy, you may actually unconsciously hold your breath like this, right? Right? Well, that is a glottal stop. Right? So it's actually a good thing when we're trying to do something with the rest of our body, but for singing, not so much. So you might be saying to yourself, okay, Malcolm, so I won't sing while I'm lifting heavy objects, right? And that would be fine. But unfortunately, glottals or mini glottal stops happen all the time when we're speaking. Let me say that again. They happen all the time when we're speaking, right? So that was a mini glottal stop. They're just something that we do, especially if you are an English speaker. And because we make these glottals when speaking, they tend to sneak into our singing as well. Say the hard g sound with me like this. G, g, like the letter G, right? G. This consonant actually has two components. A voiced component, the sound, and the unvoiced component, which is made by the back of your tongue stopping the air at the top of your throat, at your soft palate, and then releasing it. Right? There's no sound there because it's the unvoiced portion. So when you release that, you also phonate the voiced portion as well. G, g, g. So it's actually two things happening at the same time, right? You're probably not even aware that you do this, but when we make that sound, especially English speakers, we tend to amplify the part by making a glottal at the same time with our vocal cords. G, 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 Try that a few times and see if you can feel that you're making a glottal at the same time that your tongue is releasing the air from your throat. G, g. Now, when we're speaking, that's not really a big deal, but when you're singing, it quite literally stops the singing each time you make one of those glottals. And I can't say this enough. Every time a glottal stop happens, the music, the singing stops, right? So unless you want that glottal there for emphasis or for a necessary enunciation that you want to make, it's best to try and minimize them as much as possible when you sing. So how do we prevent these phantom glottals from happening? Well, as singers, we need to identify these hidden stops and try to learn to separate what your voice is doing from what the rest of your mouth or your throat is doing when making consonants. So in the case of the hard G sound that we were just talking about, you can prevent that glottal from happening by beginning the phonating part of the G before the tongue releases the airflow from the unvoiced part. So like this, if you go ng, 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 it's almost like I'm humming a little bit before I release that G. I'm humming like but with an N sound, right? Ng, ng, ng. It doesn't have to be long or loud, this little phonation that you're making before the unvoiced part of the consonant, but it needs to be there. Get that voice moving before the consonant releases. Ng, ng. It can work with other consonants as well. So for example, how about an M? Instead of going M with a glottal stop, I can go I can have a nice soft onset consonant before the rest of the consonant happens. And now for your homework. Take a minute and go through the alphabet and see if you can identify any other consonant sounds that have phantom glottals when you speak them. The next time, we'll see why all this talk about soft onset and glottals is so important in singing and in music in general. It's all about legato.